The United Mineworkers of America appear to be embracing a future including renewable energy if, and this is the big if, miners' jobs are protected and invested in during that transition. The Mineworkers plan from UMWA and Senator Joe Manchin calls for the creation of new jobs in Appalachia through tax credits. Those would subsidize the making of solar panel and wind turbine components, and also by funding the reclamation of abandoned mines. That is according to the New York Times.
So the president of the United Mineworkers of America, Cecil Roberts, he joins us now to discuss. It's good to have you back, sir. Thank you so much for joining us. Sir, what was your reaction to that New York Times story? And just generally, how is your union thinking about a transition to renewable energy?
Well, there were some misrepresentations in the New York Times story. I think it would be true that we've faced some reality here. And let me start by saying that there's been approximately 40,000 coal miners lose their jobs in the last 10 years. Some say it's a little higher than that. Some say it's a little lower, but I think 40,000 is a fair number to use. These people have not been able to find equivalent jobs in Appalachia. You go from making $75,000 to $100,000 a year to making minimum wage in some instances. In fact, most instances, you go from having health care that's second to none to perhaps not having health care. You go from earning a pension to not having a pension. So this has been something that's been ongoing in the coal fields more than 10 years. If you go back 20 years, you could probably double that 40,000 number. I want you to also remember that for every coal mining job that exists in the country, there's at least 4 equivalent jobs created to support those jobs in the mining industry. Mm-hmm. And almost all of these jobs are middle-class jobs. Most are even union jobs. So boilermakers, railroad workers, utility workers, IBEW workers, construction workers, all aid in the support of the mining industry. So these jobs have been eliminated. Much talk in the last 20 years, obviously, about just transition. And I've publicly asked people to stop using that terminology because it doesn't exist, never has existed, and people in Appalachia just don't believe it anymore. Mm-hmm. So what we've done here is we've placed ourselves in this conversation. First of all, there are jobs being created in renewable energy. Those jobs do not pay middle-class wages, or do they provide middle-class benefits like health care and pensions. So those jobs currently will not support a family. So the president has said, let's make those union jobs and jobs that support families. We wholeheartedly support that. One issue that organized labor has been raising for years and years and years is the amount of jobs, the number of jobs that's been created in places like China, for example, mainly China, because 2/3 of all solar panels and 2/3 of all wind turbines come from China. We're importing that as those technologies and those wind turbines and solar panels into this country as hard as we can go, and we're placing those solar panels and wind turbines all over the country. So people making low wages are manufacturing this technology. People making low wages are installing this technology. They're not union jobs here. We're proposing to bring those jobs offshore and bring them to the United States, make those well-paying jobs, and create an environment where people who've already lost their jobs throughout Appalachia have a place to seek employment and have a lifestyle as they used to have when they were working in the coal industry. We're members of the United Mine Workers, or in some instances, IBEW, boilermakers, or railroad workers. So those jobs are not good paying jobs now. They need to be made good paying jobs. I would remind everybody that before the UMWA came along, coal mining jobs were not good paying jobs. They did not pay a middle class lifestyle. I was watching earlier, and a comment was made about watching Matewan. And in those days, the worst jobs in America might have been coal mining. But over the years, particularly leading into the 30s, the UMWA made those jobs good jobs, made them safe jobs, fought for the communities as well as the coal miners themselves. We made Appalachia a better place to live because of our union. Now, our union's been eroded. The lifestyle of Appalachia has been eroded. West Virginia's losing a congressional representative in this next because of the last census. People are leaving after the coal fields and going somewhere else. I noticed Pennsylvania even lost a representative, and we're predicted to lose a representative in this next round of reorganization here. And so people have left, mainly because of the economic conditions that exist. We've proposed making those good paying jobs, which is exactly what the president has said. We want to make those union jobs, exactly what the president said. We said we want to bring those jobs to America instead of supporting, propping up the Chinese economy. Mm-hmm. I think most people would agree with that. We've gone a little bit further than that. Almost everyone, even my own members, look at every closed coal mine in America the same, and they're not the same. I was a coal miner, and coal we mined was used to make steel. My dad worked at a mine that made produced metallurgical coal for the production of steel. My friends on Cabin Creek, where I'm from, they worked at metallurgical coal mines. Now, the problem that's been created, and this is, by the way, a policy decision of the United States government, that we've decided we'd rather buy cheap steel from somebody somewhere else in the world as opposed to making it here. Mm-hmm. The marketplace used to be Pennsylvania and surrounding states for the production of steel. When the steel industry left the United States, it went someplace else, obviously. Now, if you're mining metallurgical coal in the United States, you've got to figure out how to get it thousands and thousands of miles away across the ocean. So let's move the marketplace back to the United States. Let's start making steel here again. By the way, I think it's a tragedy here, or a travesty or tragedy, maybe both, that we're going to spend possibly $2 trillion here on the infrastructure and find ourselves importing steel from China. We've got to change what we've been doing in this country and start looking after the American worker.
That's
we need
right.
more union jobs in this country. We need more jobs that we've lost already and given away over the last 25 or 30 years brought back here. We need the jobs that we're buying, the products we're buying from China to be made here. That alone will go 10,000 miles to improving the conditions in Appalachia. The one thing we did not say that's been reported, we never said we'll trade these jobs we have now in hopes of getting these jobs in the renewable sector. There's not a union leader in the world that would go to the bargaining table and say, well, gee, company, what do you need here? Here's a $5 wage cut. What are you going to give me?
Yeah.
That would be the height of stupidity, for one thing. And no union leader in the United States or indeed the world is going to do that.
Well, and I think
there's a lot of conversation to be had about how this plan is going to be.
Well, and I think you and your members are right to be extremely, beyond skeptical, because this has been the history of promises made about, oh, you're going to get training, there's going to be new jobs, and never comes to fruition. And like you said, the proof is right there right now in the census data in West Virginia, the state, it's the only purely Appalachian state where population declined more rapidly than any other state in the country. While we had you, I also wanted to ask you about something we covered here yesterday, which is miners who are on strike in Alabama, I think entering their 4th week of a strike, where the original company went bankrupt. They took a pay cut to help that company emerge from bankruptcy, basically rescued that company. Now it's owned by a bunch of private equity guys. They're just asking for their wages back to 2016 levels. That's literally what they want, is just to get back to the wages they had 5 years ago. Could you just give us a status update there and any plans that you have moving forward to put pressure on the company?
First of all, thank you for covering our strike. And we need all the support we can get. The country itself ought to be appalled about what's happening here. Let me just say that this has happened 60-some different times throughout Appalachia. So when people start talking about just transition, unfortunately, people end up getting their transition down to bankruptcy court. And in this instance, this is what happened. And this should not be happening in America. Not only did people lose their wages and benefits, the bankruptcy judge entered an order that said that this company could be sold free and clear, which meant these investors did not even have to hire back the workforce. The second thing this order did was took away the UMWA's right to represent the workers that will be working at the new company. Those two things should not happen in bankruptcy court, but they do. So what did the investors from New York say to us? We're not hiring anybody, and by the way, you don't represent anybody. So the union was placed in a horrendous position. By the way, the other thing they did, they cut off the health care to 2,500 retirees that had retired from Jim Walter Resources, and the bankruptcy judge approved that. The bankruptcy judge also approved the right of the new company not to pay into the pension plan. And we've had conversations with the two of you in the past. We've been able to pass legislation on Capitol Hill that came to fruition in 2019 to protect the pensions of our retirees and the health care of our retirees. The union spent over about a 6 or 7 year period here, $40 million trying to keep people in the pensions they were promised by their employer. And also, most people think the government just steps right in and protects people's pensions, but they don't. They get a fraction of their pensions. Excuse me, the most recent legislation took care of a lot of people's pensions, but this has been a long, tough fight for us with respect to pensions and health care for our members. This situation, this strike, if there's ever a strike that was justified, it's this strike right here. And by the way, this is also an unfair labor practice strike. And that's important because workers' jobs are protected if it's an unfair labor practice strike versus an economic strike. But this is going into almost a month now, and there's no end of this that I can see in sight. But the union is spending millions of dollars there every month, and we assume that we will be spending that for a considerable period of time. And we're doing something no other union does that I'm aware of. We're providing health care. However, we do think this employer is supposed to be paying the health care of these workers based on the legislation that just passed on Capitol Hill. I'm sorry that it goes along with that, but this is a pretty long story also.
Yes. Well, we really appreciate you joining us, sir. Thank you so much for laying all that out, and we'll see you next time.
Well, thank you. It's been wonderful to see both of you again.
Absolutely.
It's our pleasure. Coming up, Ryan Grimm is going to give us a backstory and Biden's picks for the DOJ's antitrust division. That's when Rising continues.